if you brief it right, you set the tone for everyone in the mission, and then you can certainly get the job done.
Most pilots don't understand what career opportunities are available in the world of aviation. They're making career decisions based on advice from friends or posts on internet forums, meaning they are taking huge risks with their livelihood without having all the details. This podcast was created to help you understand the aviation industry so you can find your dream job. Let's get ready for Pushback. Here's your host and my dad, Nik Fialka.
Hey, pilot. Welcome to Ready for Pushback. I'm Nik Fialka. You found me. It's the show. We're here. We're going to have a great interview today with my buddy Reese. And if you have ever wondered about what it takes to be a combat search and rescue helicopter pilot and fly all the special missions and save people and rescue them from terrible spots, this is the conversation for you. My buddy Reese, he's a career combat search and rescue helicopter pilot. A lot of you guys may not know, but that was part of my life as well. So it's great to have somebody talk the same talk as me that I just can really identify with. I love combat search and rescue. I love regular search and rescue. I love all of the things that it is to just go out there and try to help somebody. And that is so cool. And that's where Reese's heart is. You're going to enjoy this conversation. I'm glad you're here with me today. If you want to be on the show, I'm happy to have you on the show. Hit me up. Let me know what you think we should talk about. You can send me an email, podcast@spitfireelite.com. That's me. And we'll figure it out. Be awesome. So, but have a good story. Have something cool, something everybody wants to hear. All right. Okay. Well, sit back, relax. Let's get ready for Pushback.
Hey, pilot. Did you just get a new conditional job offer? Are you getting out of the military and going to move your family across the country? Are you going to move in base somewhere, or are you going to go out to find that second home that you've been looking for? Well, I want you to stop right now, pick up the phone, and call Marty and the team at Trident Home Loans. It's an organization that's run by pilots. They understand pilot pay. They understand contracts. They understand military. They have the best VA loans in the United States. Marty and his team have been doing mortgages for years. They've been doing my mortgages for years. I trust him and his team more than any other organization. I challenge you to get a better deal anywhere else. Go ahead, reach out, get a mortgage quote, and then call Marty and his team. They will walk you through the process and show you how competitive their rates are. So go right now, tridenthomeloans.com, and check them out.
All right, Reese, what's up, man? How are you?
Hey, good morning, Nick. Thanks for having me.
Dude, I am so stoked to have this conversation. How long have we been chatting? For a while now.
A couple years, honestly. Before you got famous with Ready for Pushback, that's before we're chatting.
Oh man. D-list celebrity. It's like, I wouldn't even call it a celebrity, but it is super nice that people listen to this show. I pretty much think it's just my mom, but dude, all right. So you are an Air Force combat search and rescue helicopter pilot, right?
That's right. We fly the HH-60 variant for the Air Force. So we got a suffix of the G, golf, and W as in whiskey.
W as in whiskey. Awesome, man. How did you get into the world of CSAR flying, combat search and rescue CSAR?
Oh man, that goes back. So it's almost like tell me about yourself a little bit. But so I was born and raised in Seattle, Washington, and I had the scenery out there is gorgeous. So what I'm getting at is that you got the Puget Sound, you have the ocean, you have the mountains there. And then what you also had was Coast Guard helicopters flying out there in the sunset. And then you had medevac helicopters flying into Harborview Medical Center out there. Harborview Medical Center is a huge trauma 1 level center. If anyone gets hurt severely, that's where they go. So I grew up watching those area ambulances and Coast Guard helicopters flying into that area, and watching them do that. And then also, I wanted to be a firefighter ever since I was a little kid. Always wanted to do that, and I pursued that as much as I could through college. But I didn't get into the Coast Guard Academy. That was a battle. I made the wait list, didn't get in. So I tried to pursue a baseball scholarship. I wasn't going to be pro. So I had to make a big adult decision at that point. So that's when I discovered, I really I've always wanted to serve my country. That's where the Coast Guard came into play also, but I didn't make it into the Coast Guard. So let's go try the Air Force RTC program. And I went and did that and discovered that that's where Air Force actually has a mission, the only Department of Defense mission solely dedicated to picking up personnel behind enemy lines if they punch out of an aircraft. Doesn't matter if it's an F-16 or a big B-52 or anything. Air Force Search and Rescue is going to be there. And, having that mission, no matter what is going on in the world, it's never going to change ever. And that's something I'm super passionate about ever since I wanted to be a firefighter as a kid, like I was saying. And I knew that was my goal. And it was my commandant of cadets in Air Force ROTC that told me about the mission. And I knew that that's all I wanted to do right there. So thankfully I was granted a pilot slot, and I always had the dream of earning those green feet, the coveted green feet, what we talk about. We can get into that about the history of Air Force Rescue. And thankfully I did well through pilot training. I got I had my own choice, and I stuck to my guns, my passion. I chose the Air Force HH-60 to fly combat search and rescue. And I've been doing that for the past 9 years or something like that. It's had a couple missions under my belt. I can talk about a lot of missions that other people have done. And it's just incredibly rewarding, and we're all fighting for the same thing. It's a wonderful culture to be a part of.
Yeah, man. For those that don't know, like the CSAR was a big part of my life, and the Navy as well. So Reese is the Air Force combat search and rescue guy, and I am the Navy combat search and rescue guy. And I realized I hadn't done a show about what it is that kind of goes on in this line of work. And I thought, perfect opportunity to just like have two nerds in one spot to be able to talk shop. What? Okay, so you chose helicopters out of flight school and went down that path.
Correct.
Was it flying the 60? Was it difficult to get into the spirit of learning how to do the basics like hovering and auto rotations and things like that?
That's certainly a challenge, yeah, for everyone. And I fly civilian fixed wing, and we train in fixed wing as well in the Air Force the same way the Navy does, and the T6. That's how we trained 10 years ago. It's changing now. But it was certainly a battle to try and aerodynamically, it's just different. You're trying to get the auto rotation. What people don't understand is that we don't glide. It may look like we glide when we lose an engine or both engines, depending on the helicopter you're flying. But that rotor is life, and that's how we treat it as helicopters. So when you're dealing with an emergency, sort of speak in generalities here, in an airplane, you have time to glide perhaps, or time to think. In a helicopter, if that rotor stops spinning, you're dropping like a rock. So you have to make really fast, quick decisions utilizing the crew. And everything from auto rotations, which is kind of what I'm alluding to there, is maintaining the rotor speed so you can glide. And then hovering. It's all a complete challenge, just a different beast flying a helicopter. And it makes it really fun. If you're really passionate about aviation and you have time, money, or whatever to go try and get a helicopter rating, boy, you will have a lot of fun with it.
If you want to be the most frustrated you've ever been in your whole life for like 2 weeks straight, I highly recommend learning how to fly a helicopter.
That's right.
Because it's so frustrating trying to balance the pedals and the collective and the cyclic all in the same, like just getting it balanced and putting the aircraft where you want it, when you want it. It is, gosh, man, there's nothing worse. I remember, so a funny little sea story, like my very first time hovering a helicopter, I was at this place called Spencer Field, which is in a town called Pace outside of Pensacola. And I'm at Spencer Field, and the guy teaching me how to fly is sitting next to me. And we're in a TH-57, which is a Bell Jet Ranger. And we're doing our thing, and all of a sudden, inside like the little scupper air vent that sticks out the side, a dragonfly flew into that thing, and it went into my helmet, in between my visor and my face. and it's just beating the crap out of me, and scaring me to death. And I'm like, the helicopter's going nuts and all over. And the guy takes control. He's freaking out. What's wrong with, like, thinking I'm having a seizure or something like that. And I'm trying to, like, get this stupid dragonfly out. And that's like my first experience hovering. It was like the worst day of my life.
Gosh,
Man.
I don't have one quite like that. That's pretty sporty right there.
It was not fun. I highly do not recommend dragonflies in your helmet. Okay, so did you, like, the combat search and rescue training is very, very specialized, and there's a lot to it. Can you talk me through the training that goes on to learn how to, because, like, you've got flying a helicopter, you've got doing the basics of landing and taking off, and maybe whatever the high hovers are and things like that. But when you're doing combat search and rescue, like, it's very specific skill set. So talk me through all of what you're doing.
Sure. There's two different schools of thought with combat search and rescue in terms of a mission. You're going to have a deliberate and you're going to have an immediate. So just think about those two words for a minute. Deliberate is, where the isolated personnel or the survivor or pilot, whoever you want to say, is. Immediate is, and this is our bread and butter, this is where we highly succeed. It's where you're out flying and all of a sudden, bam, you get a mission drop or a mission tasking. And it's what we train to is if a fighter pilot punches out or ejects from their aircraft. And we have to figure out where they are, when they punched out. And if you can imagine, you're trying to go and you're trying to pick up the kids from school, and you are trying to get a friend to help you out with that. And maybe they're not at school. Maybe they're at some kid's birthday party, some other friend's house. And you have this game of telephone going on. And you're like, oh, Jimmy is at this place. Jane is at this place and this address. Well, magnify that times 100, or just pick a number, because we're trying to figure out through this game of telephone from higher air flyers, like higher in altitude, down to us at 50 feet to 100 feet, trying to get all this information on an immediate tasking. And we're trying to figure out which direction to go, and kind of broad scope is, how do we fuel plan? How are we going to navigate there? What's the best way to do that? Because think about combat search and rescue. If you've seen the movie Behind Enemy Lines with Owen Wilson, that's kind of the idea of what we do, right? So it's a movie, it's Hollywood, right? It happened. The thing happened. It was an Air Force pilot that got shot down. No, not a Navy Bubba. But the idea behind it is you go behind enemy lines to go get someone, no matter what the cost is. Their worst day is going to be our best day. And we believe that to a heart. Like, we're passionate about it, and we need to get that information for that immediate tasking. And part of that nav routing that I was talking about is you have to figure out where the bad folks are and aren't. And you have to avoid them, stay behind terrain, or do whatever you got to do to not create more combat search and rescue.
Yeah, and I'll add on to that. Let's say somebody is shot down and there's some kind of battle going on. There is intelligence that gives you a general idea of what weapons are at play and where they might be. And there's a level of certainty, like, hey, we're pretty sure about that. Pretty sure means not sure at all, and really vague means absolutely not. So it's this game that it's this risk analysis also that you have to take as a crew to, like, because you're not going in by yourself usually.
Right.
Usually there's at least 2 helicopters at least, and a lot of other stuff making sure that the helicopter cannot get demolished. But you got to think about there are different layers without. This is so hard.
Yeah, I know, right?
I know.
It's tough.
It is tough because there's different layers to the onion, because think about it. If you're going to send in 2 helicopters to go rescue a person, you want to give those helicopters the best chance to be able to accomplish that mission. So you're going to you've got all your different weapon systems that you have that you can employ, and you're going to evaluate what weapon systems you can employ to soften up the area so the helicopters can make it through. And the helicopter is flying through this mess. And yeah. And then not only are they flying through the mess, they're flying at like 50 feet or below. And it's awesome. It's a hell of a ride. But it's terrifying, and stuff's blowing up around you. And that's just and that's Tuesday, right? So it's a fun life as a CSAR pilot, but it's a lot of work too. Talk to me about the amount of work that goes in here.
Yeah, sure. So kind of alluding to your question you previously had, the training that goes into it. So I went off on the deliberate versus immediate, but the training that goes into it, you have to be ready for anything. It could be a high mountain hoist that we have to do, or it could be infiltration of the pararescue team, the Guardian Angels. We call them PJs. And it could be infiltrating them onto a rooftop via fast rope and picking them up via a rope ladder. Just YouTube those or Google image those, and you'll get a picture of what we do. So
listen, man, that damn rope ladder. Don't get me started on the rope ladder.
It's a pain. You know what? Props to the Guardian Angels and the PJs out there, because they have to climb that thing with a 50-pound ruck minimum. And that's a battle. And all we got to do is hold the hover in, 50 knot winds, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the things we specialize in, so those, we call them AIEs, or alternate insertion and extraction. And those are various different things. The other things you can add on there is a rappel. So if a pararescueman has to rappel out of the helicopter, that's how they'll do that. They'll belay themselves down. And then the other thing that we absolutely specialize in that only one other branch of the U.S. military does is aerial refueling. And that's a 160th SOAR. Props to those men and women out there for sure. But that increases our ability massively, because therefore we do not have any limitations on range, how far we can actually fly. So in terms of specialized training, you have those dynamic alternate insertion and extraction techniques we use with the different rope ladders and fast rope. But aerial refueling is something we practice, especially where I'm at now, where I teach all the schoolhouse, the youngins coming in after pilot training. We do aerial refueling almost every day. And it's one of my favorite things, because it's a chance to deliberately integrate with your brothers and sisters who are fighting for Air Force Rescue. They fly the HC-130J. And they have a drogue that comes out, and we aerial refuel with them. And it just makes our ability that much more to go pick up anyone who needs help.
Yeah. And that drogue is that basket you see in the videos coming out that
that's right.
The fuel inserts into. Another thing that you really have to do is practice fast roping, practice, exfils where people are, like you mentioned, the rope ladder, but also the fastest way to get people in and out of a place is to land. And so you have to practice some of the hardest stuff, which is confined area landings, and also dust landings, brownout, whiteout landings. And the third part, which makes, I feel like, the U.S. military exponentially better than any other military on the planet, is the capability to operate using night vision goggles. And so no matter if it's low light or high light, it gives such a great advantage. And all of those, think if you are going to be training on those things, and you're going to be in the squadron, you're going to be based in one place, and maybe it's in the desert, and you can get some mountain stuff, and you can get some dust stuff, but you're going to have to travel, and you have to go all over the place to these different environments so that you can get experience doing it. So there's a lot of on the road that's associated with just being a combat search and rescue pilot, and also a lot of weird flying in the middle of the night, doing flying to places that you never even thought about, that people talk about on the news 3 days after it happens. And so it's, there's a lot of variability to it, but there's a lot of life sacrifice that I thought I was not expecting when I ended up in my first squadron. Has that been kind of the same idea for you?
In terms of life sacrifice and everything?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Are you just referring to like deployments and TDY, temporary duty, and constantly going out? And yep, absolutely. My first assignment, I don't know how many days I was gone. I did dozens and dozens of TDYs or temporary duties, like displacing from the family for weeks at a time. I did multiple deployments out of there to the desert and everything. But, you know, in terms of life sacrifices, my wife, Sophie, she and I were on board with the same thing. And I met her in college when I learned about combat search and rescue. She knew I wanted to be a firefighter since I was a little kid. And bless her, you know, because she's been holding down the fort at home. Any spouse is amazing. They're like, they keep you whole, they keep you together. And that's super important for me and her. And she's been completely supportive of, you know, the mission that we go and do. And she knows I'm passionate about it. And therefore she is actually, in fact, passionate about it as well.
Talk to me about the brief, because the brief to me is the hardest thing to learn. And it's it just is it takes more time than the actual operation.
That's right. Yes. So this is where, I talked about deliberate and immediate, two different things. So immediate, not that you brush over a lot of stuff in the brief, but you establish contracts. So imagine you're signing a contract with a real estate agent. You got to do this, that, or a contract is binding. So when we integrate with other flyers, other parts of the weapons package you're referring to, we establish contracts in the mission planning cell. Those are things that we can depend on the other like A-10s, F-15s. We can depend on them to fulfill those contracts before we can do anything else. So we briefed those within our actual crew brief. Now that was kind of an immediate. So we talk about those for an immediate. For a deliberate specifically, oh man, this brief will last a long dang time. It may almost, you know, sometimes it's so long. So if in fact, when we actually do this for real, in real life, you're going to have the spare crew, because crew rest is a thing, still is a thing no matter what. You are in fact going to have a mission planning crew, and then a crew briefing crew, and then a crew flying crew sometimes. So it's going to have 3 different groups of folks that are going to do different tasks, and you have to make sure you're all melded into one. But for a deliberate tasking, let's just say we're going to go out and we know where we're going. I'm going to spend at least 1 hour talking through every single thing that we're going to cover. And I'm going to go through every single contract that we have with the A-10s or F-15s or whoever we're integrating with. Every single contract we're going to have with the pararescue folks in the back, the medic team. Every single contract you get the point, every single contract we're going to have with my wingman who's behind me. And I'm going to bring up satellite imagery of all these turns that we have to do. And I'm going to say, hey, I want you on this side. I want you on that side for this turn. I want you, we have a air-to-air TACAN that almost everyone has to tell how far away you are from somebody. And I'm going to tell them, hey, I want you at a 0.2 nautical mile distance, or I want you at 1 rotor disc for this section, or I want you at 1 mile. And then we have different formation positions that we talk about as well. And then I can tell them on what side. You see how granular we get with this thing? And that is, you know, I'm very passionate about it, because if you brief it right, you set the tone for everyone in the mission, and then you can certainly get the job done. And as we all know, missions don't go always according to plan, but if you can set the tone at the beginning, and your goal is to have no questions afterwards, but at the same time, you want folks to ask questions. You don't want people to fall asleep in the brief. So it's important to engage others in the crew brief. So I'm going to point out my flight engineers who sit in the back and defend us with the 50 cal side mounted 50 cal machine guns. I'm going to point to them and be like, hey, you're going to be seeing a threat out your side on this leg. So you need to keep your eyes peeled between the 10 and 8 o'clock. And you need to break us away from that threat if we're going to have something. Okay. So that's the important part too. So these, like I said, these briefs can last 1 hour plus minimum, if you're really trying to go out there and get somebody.
Yeah. And depending on how many helicopters you're taking, really sets the tone for what happens with contingencies, because the things that you don't expect to go wrong are the things that usually totally ruin it. And there's
there are many operations that have happened. The one in Iran was at Eagle's Talon. I can't remember the name of the operation, but happened in the 80s, where the 53 got balled up and the C-130 hit it.
Yep.
But that is what stood up the special operation, like combat search and rescue teams, like the dedicated units, to be able to be trained and proficient to be able to execute these high risk missions and be successful at it. And it's a great testament to the investment of the military to make sure that they bring their people home. And that's been, there's so much satisfaction you get out of a rescue. And, you know, I have personally been on some rescues, which have been great. I've never had anybody shot down where I need to go get them, but I've pulled a lot of civilians out of precarious spots with my team. And it's been an awesome thing to be a part of. Timothy P. Pope is a certified financial planner dedicated to guiding professional pilots through smart financial planning. Whether it's saving for retirement, investment management, a seamless military transition, or strategic tax planning, Tim is your trusted financial partner. Also, you can join Tim as he leads engaging discussions on personal finance and strategies for professional pilots on the brand new Pilot Money podcast. Timothy P. Pope, helping professional pilots make the most out of life. What have you guys been on? Have you been on any missions yourself?
I have, yes. Mm-hmm.
Talk to me. What you got?
Yeah,
this is so interesting.
Yeah, so I got a handful of stories. So I have my own stories, and then I have stories from friends of mine, colleagues of mine who have flown, especially in the Alaska area. So that's in fact where mine took place. And I went out there to help just for as an instructor evaluator out there. I just went out to help that unit, and bam, all of a sudden it's typical Alaska. Folks need some help. The situations where we had what's called a double header, and this is where our aerial refueling specialty comes into play, because we couldn't really land. We had to go across the ocean for some part of it, and we had to go pick someone up. So we had someone who had fallen hundreds of feet down a trail in the mountains in Alaska. And then we had another person, elderly gentleman, who had fallen on his fishing vessel. So this isn't military oriented, it's all civilian, but that's what we're ready for. We're ready for civilian or military at any point, just like you were mentioning. And you have two survivors there at that point. So we refer to them as survivors, isolated personnel for the military and everything. So the two survivors are there, and you have to pick which one that you're going to go help first, like which one is more critically injured. And so you have to compartmentalize the feelings and figure out, you know, is the old gentleman injured more, or is it the hiker that's injured more? Which one's closer? Which one's at a lower altitude? Do we have to fuel dump? All this kind of thing that you're thinking about. And so what we did is we discovered that the Alaska has a really good operation. So they have one person who's in charge of like the coordination. Then you have the specific crews. You have the pararescue, we call it the triad, the pararescue men, the PJs. You have the H-60 air crew, which is me. And then you have the HC-130s, the Combat King. So those are the folks that can go anywhere and establish communications immediately. And they air fearless, boy, we need them. They can't go anywhere. So what we do is for this mission, we go out to the mountains in Alaska, and we're going to pick up this hiker through the help of the coordinating assets that I was talking about. We find them almost immediately. They're on a snowbank and everything. He messed up his leg pretty bad, and we had to get to him first because he was going to lose that leg. And if we can have an impact to get somewhere fast so someone can keep a limb, keep their life, whatever it is, we're going to do it immediately. So we get overhead, and mind you, like I said, I was over there as a guest. So I went to the Army High Altitude Aviation Training Site in Colorado. So we train at over a mile high at our schoolhouse in the high desert and high density altitude. So I'm used to mountainous ops. I'm used to power limited situations where your power required exceeds your power available. Think of told and landing and takeoff distance. It exceeds what you have available. So what we get there when we're flying overhead, this first survivor is he's on the side of a mountain, broken leg. He's going to lose it. We have to get him to a hospital ASAP. But we don't have the power margin we need. We need to dump gas. So that's another thing that the Air Force H-60s have, is the ability to dump fuel.
Can I jump in here real quick?
Yeah.
Just for the pilot that's listening, if you're not a helicopter pilot, like the reason all of this is so difficult is because at these mountains, at these high density altitudes, the performance of the rotor blades is really, really bad. And so they're getting as big of a bite of air as they possibly can, but the heavier you are, the more limited you are. And so at some point you can't hold it level, right? And so you've got to figure out the math of it, drop the amount of weight that you need. So he's dumping gas to make himself lighter, but that's reducing the amount of time he can be on scene. So he's got to sort like this is risk analysis of like, how the hell are we going to get this guy? So, all right, Reese, sorry, back to you, brother.
Yeah. Thank you for that. No, I appreciate it. We're over there, we're dumping gas. We dump gas to get the power margin that you were referring to. So it's a safe operation, not only safe for us, but safe for the survivors on the ground. So there's a med team with him on the ground and patched up his leg as much as I could before they can get to hospital. But if we don't dump that gas and we put everyone's lives at risk, because you could drop out of the sky, just like we were talking about the efficiency of the rotor blades, putting it simply. So with a high angle hoist for this one, we're hovering at over 100 feet trying to get this person. And the flight engineers in the back are in charge of the hoist, trying to make it swing. So they're sticking their arm out like 3 feet, trying to hold this hoist and everything to make sure that it's stable. For the pararescue men, the medics getting down there, and then also having to hoist them back up. So it is a challenge. So over 100-foot hoist, you're trying to dangle this cable with a rotor wash, just the wind rushing down the rotor blades makes communication, makes stability, especially on a snow embankment where this person was at, makes it incredibly difficult. So it's really important that we keep in communication with the crew. And that's where the crew CRM really comes into play for Air Force Rescue. And really any time you're doing high angle hoist for any branch, it doesn't have to be Air Force. So we pick up the hiker, and we know we have to take him to hospital as fast as we can. And luckily it's a short drive there via the helicopter when we land at a hospital, but it doesn't stop there. You have to keep going. You forget you have a double header. You have this other individual who immediately needs our help, and there's no one else that can go get him. So we pick up, we take off, and it's a long flight this time. So you have a long time to coordinate, but that also means that's a lot of time you're burning fuel. And this is where the C-130 comes into play, and where our specialty in aerial refueling comes into play, because you can't miss. You can't miss. You need gas right away. Otherwise, you're going to starve the engines. You're going to fall. And so we get gas, thankfully, and the C-130 goes off, and they're able to establish communications with the fishing vessel to get more of an updated medical update for our pararescue men, our PJs, in the back of the helicopter. And thankfully, eventually we get there. The elderly gentleman, he's okay. He's doing fine. And we make our own landing onto a beach. That's the awesome thing about a helicopter, is you can land wherever the heck you want, especially if it's life, limb, or eyesight. You're going to do whatever you can to help someone out. So that deemed to be the fastest way was to land on a beach nearby and have them put the elderly gentleman in a boat and have them drive on the boat over. If anyone's seen the movie The Guardian or anything like that, you imagine they're doing the hoists from the Coast Guard helicopter down onto a fishing vessel, and the towers of the fishing vessel get caught in the hoist line. That's what we were trying to avoid. So the fastest way is thinking outside the box, right? So what's one thing you can do? Oh, you can put them on the skiff of the fishing vessel, send them to shore, and the helicopter will land ashore. That way you don't have to deal with any of that stuff.
Yeah, it's funny. So Navy guy here, we always think about a couple things, like what's the sea state, because the size of the waves and the size of the vessel that they're on really, really matter. And if you're very lucky, it'll be something big. But I've had times where either me or guys in my squadron, like you go out and there's a sailboat. You mentioned the outriggers on the fishing boats. Same thing with a sailboat. When you think of that mast in the middle, and if you've got 10, 15, 20 foot swells, and you've got this this rod just bouncing around towards you and trying to get in the way of your swimmer. Like, that is so dangerous. And there's a lot of different ways you can handle that, and none of them are safe except getting them away from the thing onto the shore. Like, this is the only way to be safe. It's not
right.
fun.
Yeah, no, exactly. To your point, we got lucky. We truly did that. The fishing vessel was close. They had maneuvered close enough to a beach or somewhere a helicopter could land, and we could avoid that situation altogether. The sea state, the towers, outriggers, everything. And we were lucky to be able to just pick them up on the beach. And, the next thing we're thinking about is, okay, how do we get this individual to a higher level of care fast? One thing we commonly do, because we work in the team with the C-130, like I mentioned, is we'll go and do what's called a transload. So we're going to put the patient or whoever it is onto the C-130 in the back, and then they'll take them much faster to whatever higher level of care is necessary. But this is Alaska we're talking about. So the weather's rolling in. We can't get into any airfield. The C-130 can't land. The helicopters can, sure, we'll fly at 20 feet below the weather or whatever. You're going to watch out for stuff. But C-130s cannot do that. So what we ended up having to do is take the patient back all the way to the higher level of care ourselves, which is totally fine. We have the best medics, I believe, in the entire DoD with the pararescue and the guardian angels. They're the best. An incredible asset to have on the team, and they kept the patient stable the whole way there and until they got to a higher level of care. But the best part, Nick, why I love this job so much is not. We don't do this for recognition. I don't want any recognition, period, dot. We don't want any of that. That's just our job. We want to help people, and then we'll go help the next person. If we can make a difference, that's great. What we get is the PJs, the pararescue men, have a contact at the hospital that they work at locally, because they want a debrief. They want to hear how they did in terms of their medicine and their level of care. And so what happened is this elderly gentleman actually messaged back the pararescue team lead and told them how grateful they were to be able to have the care that we provided. And that just, I tell my kids, and kids are 5 and 3. I know you got kids, Nick. I listen to the show. But our kids 5 and 3, we're reading that book called Fill Your Bucket, like Be Nice. And boy, I tell you what, that filled our buckets just as rescue professionals and everything. And that was just incredible to hear the feedback from an actual patient and everything, that we actually made a difference. And that's what we do it for. And it just fills your bucket to be able to do it more and more every single time. And we love it.
I'll tell you this, my most rewarding flight ever happened when I was an O2. I was a Lieutenant JG in the Navy. I was a brand new aircraft commander. And we were on an aircraft carrier, and there was somebody on the aircraft carrier had a heart attack, and I was on alert. They needed a launch. I was like asleep in the rack, from asleep to in the air in less than 15 minutes. And we saved that guy's life. We were able to get him to a hospital to get him the care that he needed. We saved his life. Fast forward like 4 months, and one of my buddies from another department, who was not a pilot, but a guy I had known, he walks into the ready room and he's like, "Hey, who was the pilot on that one alert launch that we had on this day?" And I said, "Oh, that was me." And he said, "Hey, you saved my life. Thank you."
That's awesome. Isn't that great?
Yeah, it was. It was such an awesome life experience. And I don't even remember the guy's name, but I'll never forget. Never once did I think to kind of look back to see who it was or whatever. Not even, I'd probably be more stressed out and have, when you're mission focused, you just know the next step and the next step and the next step. And you don't you keep yourself emotionally disconnected from
compartmentalized, for sure.
Absolutely. And it makes it easy. And it makes it efficient. And it may not be easy, might be a lot of difficulty, but it makes you capable. And so I'm certainly glad that I did not see who it was. And that would be extra hard if you were to ever pick up somebody you knew that was you'd probably put yourself in too much risk to save that person's life. And that's another part of that balance is, you can't do everything for everybody, but you can certainly try within the limits of capability, and knowing those capabilities and where you stand and what you can and what you can't do. Those are big boy rules, and it's really hard to come to the point where it's too much. And but man, we can do a whole lot, can't we?
Oh, yes. Yeah, we totally can. And I love it. It's the most rewarding job. That mission never changes. And that's why I love it so much. And I'm dedicated to it for sure.
Yeah. Talk to me about the green feet. You mentioned that before earlier. Tell the pilot that's listening about the story of the Jolly Greens.
That's right. So I wish I had my little picture or whatever, green feet, but you can Google it, Jolly Green Feet. So this goes back to Vietnam era, and there's two schools of thought here, just for the record. So you have guardian angels who have their thought, and then you have the air crew who have their thought. So the story of the Jolly Green Giant, from Reese's perspective, in my knowledge, is you're in the jungle grass of Vietnam, and this is where Air Force rescue really took place. You have the helicopter called the H-3, massive thing, could do air refueling as well. And they fly in formation most of the time as well. The Army's doing pickups all over the place, but Air Force rescue's there too. It's born there. And the Green Feet story is two different schools of thought. You have the two helicopters that are landing in formation into the jungle grass. They stay there in the jungle grass, and then they take off. So what happens at the jungle grass? It's weighed down. So those are two Jolly Green Giant footprints. Boom, boom, right there on the grass. You never know they were there until you saw those feet. And the helicopter was jungle green, so that's why it's a green giant. The other schools of thought is with the pararescuemen, they're being hoisted down. It's their 2 feet landing in the jungle grass as well, and it's those feet, the medics' feet, that land there and pick up the survivor as well, and then they get hoisted back up and everything. Two awesome schools of thought that have a wonderful history. And if you ever see these green feet around, that it could be maintenance personnel, it could be C-130s, PJs, it could be helicopter aircrew. It doesn't matter. We're all part of the same mission right there. And we are all trying our best to earn our feet. In fact, the one thing that motivated me is, if you're a football fan, Russell Wilson when he played for the Seahawks or something like that. And he had this saying, since I grew up in Seattle, he would say, separation is in the preparation. And that was my motivating quote through pilot training. And in that quote, I had my green feet, or the green feet, right above it, because I was determined to get to that mission to try and make a difference as much as I could. So I had those green feet, and separation is in the preparation. So I would always try to prepare as much as I could to get through pilot training, to be able to have the option, to be able to have the choice, to be able to fly for Air Force rescues.
All right. I'm writing it down. Separation is in the preparation. I love it. Hey, pilot. Does your pilot uniform make a short flight feel like a transcon slog? Flight uniforms have reinvented aviation shirts with 3D stretch, stain repellents, and no wrinkles. These shirts are just plain comfortable and ready for takeoff right out of your rollerboard. Flight Uniform is trusted by more than 25,000 pilots, and their flagship flight shirt has over 1,500 5-star reviews. I've worn every pilot shirt out there, and if you know me, you know I only wear flight uniforms. Be the envy of every cockpit at flightuniform.com and get a special podcast exclusive discount with the code SpitfirePod20 to take 20% off your first order at flightuniform.com. Is there a Jolly Green squadron in Valdosta?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let me tell you my story.
Yeah. Oh, let's get it.
2004 or 5, I got a call. I was in Jacksonville at my squadron, HS5, the Night Dippers, and the commanding officer, who is not my best friend, he diverted to Valdosta because he said the weather was coming in, and they made me drive from Jacksonville, Florida to Valdosta. He rented a car and drove home. They made me drive out with an entire crew and fly the plane and land. Like, the weather wasn't even coming down until after I left. And so I had to fly the stupid mission to come back. Like, no real reason except the guy wouldn't land below 501. So I landed at like 200.5 on an ILS in a helicopter, which is no big deal, but just pain in the butt and not fun to fly in the clouds all the time, because it's not what we do usually. But the reason this is a Valdosta story is because when I landed that helicopter,
there were like 400 Jolly Green Giant stickers all over that dang helicopter. Like we were pulling them off for months and months and months. And those guys and gals in Valdosta, man, they crushed it. So hats off to you. Cause like I bet that helicopter is in a museum and still has those dang stickers. I mean, they were everywhere. It was inside, like they were taking
confirm nor deny we did anything like that. It could have been anybody out there. Those stickers you can buy on Etsy.
Man, listen, dude. They were like they took the transmission panels off and they were like in there. Like the maintenance dudes just went nuts. Like just inside the whole helicopter on the I-beams of the skin. Like, oh my gosh, they're awesome. Good job, guys.
That's just some DoD love right there for you.
Man, we got zapped hard on that. That was
that's a good story. That's awesome.
I think my buddy Ryan Kelchner and I flew that flight. I'll have to call him. He, anybody that works for Booz Allen Hamilton can look him up. He's a muckety muck out there. Golly, that was wild. Tell me, are you still flying right now?
I am. Yep. So I'm currently an instructor evaluator on the H-60, and the new helicopter and the old helicopter. I was talking about the Golf and the Whiskey, the two different helicopters. So doing them both, it's a battle. It's fun. Just imagine the Golf helicopter is like all steam gauges, like your old Cessna and stuff. It's still got a FMS in it, or what we call a CDU. But now the new helicopter is essentially just an Army Mike model. So it's got brand new avionics suite, better FMS and better flight director. So you got to go between the two depending on who the student is at the time. But I still fly them. Yep.
Yeah, it's such a fun opportunity, and the helicopter world is. Helicopter world's really small, and I keep talking about, the world of aviation is small. The helicopter community is even smaller, and the combat search and rescue community is even smaller. And that's why, I don't know, I think that's why we even instantly became buddies, because it is such a treat to be able to just have that, like, immediately go into conversations that we connect with the verbiage, with the experience. It's a funny thing. And, so I kind of geek out over that. And, I know that combat search and rescue lifestyle, is busy and it's hard and it's a big sacrifice for the families. And so, thank you to your spouse and your kiddos for just being able to, gracefully let you go do the hard stuff, because it's a good world.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yours as well. Thanks to your family as well. You were doing this before I was doing it. God, you're doing a lot more than I was. We were in the desert for quite a long time. So if folks are interested in kind of the medevac casualty evacuation part of combat search and rescue, Air Force rescue, you can look up the Nat Geo inside combat rescue. And then if you want a more traditional aspect, just Google the history of Air Force rescue, and develop a passion for it. And that's where the whole family gets involved, like you're talking about.
Yeah, for sure. Do watch all the National Geographic things about search and rescue and combat search and rescue. There's a high level of intensity to it. When I was in Africa, I can't really get into all the things, but we certainly had combat search and rescue units there, a very robust combat search and rescue capability, and all the things that go along with that. And there are places in the world where the Department of Defense identifies big threats, and they pump that up just to make sure that even if we do lose an aircraft, we can get our people back, because that's way more important than stuff. So,
that's right. And one of the things that a lot of people don't realize is, if you're flying pointy nose and fast, there has to be someone there to pick you up. So what a lot of people don't realize is that Air Force Rescue, specifically because we're the only dedicated DoD asset for the mission, is we're going to be in place to pick y'all up. So if any of the viewers or listeners are wanting to be pointy nose and fast, just know that Air Force Rescue is already in place, ready to pick you up at any moment's notice. And
yeah, also,
a pro tip for any of my pointy nosed people that happen to be in the Navy. When I was in my squadron, my rescue guys had a no pickup list. So if you were a jerk to my guys, they would put it, and it was public. It was just like, they would have this no pickup list and they'd have a call sign on there and a reason why. And they would get upset. The pilots would get real upset. Like, why am I on the no pickup list? Wait a second. Like, are you serious? Is this going to be a real thing? It was the funniest. The specific people that we had and the guys and gals in there were just tremendously funny. And they were, clearly they were not serious about it, but boy, they acted like they were serious, and that people had to go apologize to the rescue swimmers. Man, it was so good.
It was so funny. I love that. I love playing little tricks on them because, it's one of those things, they don't really think about us until they need us.
Yeah.
Kind of like the Coast Guard. So props to the Coast Guard men and women out there. You don't think about them until you need them. And one of the greatest things that we had on deployment was we were doing an airborne, just waiting, just in case anything happened. So we were flying airborne, and this was deployed, and we got a text message, if you will, through our systems from one of those high flyers saying, thank you. Here's what we did. Here's the results of you being out here, being prepared to pick us up. And here's what our mission accomplished. And that is super rewarding to us.
One of the things that we do that I think is super fun is when we go, you have experiences in Nevada as well, but we will go to Nevada and get somebody from another squadron, and they'll grab them in the middle of the night and say, grab your gear, come with me. And they'll get in a truck and they'll drive hours and hours out into the middle of the desert, and they'll drop them off and say, all right, you're evading, you're surviving. And then they'll have to connect with us, and we'll get the launch, and we'll have the whole thing, and have to go find the survivor and pick that survivor up. And the guy is like miserable because he's been out, but it gives good perspective for what it takes to be, to have to endure as somebody, that's in a real tight spot. So
yeah, they put those folks out there, and it could be the winter or it could be in the summer in the Nevada desert, and they're out there for multiple days. Like they're not out there for 3 hours. They're out there for a couple days, and they're trying to do their training that they learned back when they finished pilot training. They're trying to figure out how to survive out there. And just like you said, our job is we integrate with other high flyers out there, and it's so much fun. I love that part of this job. And that certainly when this next chapter, when the page turns, that's one of the things I'm going to miss the most, is to integrate with all different countries and branches of military to be able to go pick up that one person that's on the ground. And that's where we train to out in Nevada that you're alluding to. And I love it. I think it's so much fun. It's challenging and it's rewarding.
Yeah. They had one, this was cool. It was a check ride for, like the highest qual that we have in the Navy, without getting into the terms, like the highest quality you can get. Right. So it was a flight of 2. They go out, they pick a guy up, but then they simulate that the helicopter goes down. And so they've got all the instructors have an entire instructor crew, and they actually take that helicopter back and leave everybody else behind that flew it in. In the middle of the night. And then everybody comes back, lands, shuts down, and then goes to the alert team and says, hey guys, heads up, you have survivors that you have to go get. And they had to plan it all and go do it. And these people were not ready to spend the night out in the middle of nowhere. It was awesome. All the good stuff that goes along with it.
I think that's so much fun too. And thankfully I was not one of those people. It happened right next to me. Thankfully I was not one of those people that got chosen to go spend the night out in the desert, multiple nights out in the desert. But it just goes to show that they're trying to make it as realistic as possible, that anything can happen. So as that alert crew, you got to be ready. You got to go. And in that example, I imagine it was a running exercise. So whatever happened where they got shot down, so to speak, it's going to carry over until the next night with the same data and stuff. So you got to plan around what had just happened. So they're trying to make it as realistic as possible.
Yeah. There's a lot of people are pretty creative that do and they're tricky and they're jerks. So hats off to the trainers. Good job.
Yeah. They're good at their job. They're the best.
They are. It's a good world. Dude, Reese, thank you for spending your day with me. This is I can go on and on and on and on and on, because this is what I love. And I love remembering, And so also that's why I do this show, is because I get a chance to remember, and it's an awesome opportunity for me to relive some glory days and hear your glory days. So, thanks for your service. Thanks for what you do. Thanks for those stupid Green Giant stickers.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you for your service to CSAR and the Navy as well, and to your family as well. I mean, it was awesome to be here, just talk shop with you. And hopefully it was helpful to the listeners and viewers that, the Air Force doesn't have just fighter jets and dropping bombs and transload or taking logistic runs and everything. You can have a higher impact. Just look a little bit deeper into whatever branch of service if you're desiring to serve at all. And Air Force Rescue is one of those things. And we're happy to help. I'm happy to help anyone that I can through your listeners and viewers.
Yeah, and you're all right if I put your email address in the show notes, so people, if they want to be a combat search and rescue pilot, they might be able to reach out and find out more about it?
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to help anyone in their journey. Absolutely. Professional aviation, civilian, military. I can get as much gouge as I can. If I can't find the answer for them, I certainly will find someone else who will get the answer for them.
Sweet, buddy. All right. Well, hey, guys, you heard it here first. If you want to be bleeding edge, like getting shot at in the middle of the night, go talk to Reese. He will hook you up. Thanks for being part of the show, buddy. I appreciate you, and you're the best.
Yeah. Cheers, buddy.
All right, pilots, that's a wrap on this episode, and I know what you're thinking. You need to make yourself a little bit better. So how do you make yourself a little bit better? You tighten up your resume. So here's what I want you to do. Go over to my website, spitfireelite.com/podcast, and you can download my free resume template. It is tight, organized, and it's the perfect pilot resume. It's just something I like to do for the pilot group, and it is free to you. So go over there, spitfireelite.com/podcast, and download your free resume template. While you're over there, look at all the services that we offer. Lots of great interview prep, lots of great application review. Everything you need to be a professional pilot is right there. spitfireelite.com/podcast. Thanks, and I'll see you on the next episode.